Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Junkyard TV, and this is probably going to be a fairly long video. What we're going to be talking about today are seats. And as you can see, this is a very nice condition original Cuda seat. It's been reupholstered, and what we're going to do is replace it with this. This is a junkyard version of a nice racing seat pulled out of a Hyundai Tiberon. In this case, a 2006. I believe the seats from 2003 all the way to 2007 are basically the same. I've already started some paint right here. This thing was in pretty bad shape, but actually I noticed around here we have quite a few junkyards, and the Tiberon seats are fairly available, so I'm just going to actually pull that off and replace it with a better one once I find it. But this one's pretty much straight out of the junkyard. You can see it's in pretty good shape. It does need some work. I have already done the passenger side. This is the driver's side seat. The passenger side is completely done and installed in the Cuda. I thought I would do that first. That way I can show you step by step on this seat, and it'll seem like I know what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. And this is again the original Cuda seat, the driver's side. And this is what you do. Basically 4 bolts that you run into underneath the car, real easy to take off. And what you're going to need to do is unbolt the brackets, at least this bracket. You don't need to do anything with this. This is unfortunately on the other one, on the passenger side, I ruined this. You don't even need to take this off of your Cuda seat, leave it on there. So if you resell it, do whatever you got to do with your Cuda seats. Don't even touch this one. Real easy, just 2 bolts right here. You slide this down, there's another bolt right there, and that plops off. And you do have to separate it from the slide rail, and I'll go into that in a minute. But just a real quick important tip, do not even mess with this side. The most important thing you got to do is the measurements. From here to here is 37.5 centimeters, and then from here to here is 31 centimeters. So those are your specs that you're going to have to do when you start getting into fabricating the brackets. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what we're going to dive into, and I'm going to pull this bracket off right now, and we'll go into what you got to do once this bracket is off. Again, like I said, there's only 2 bolts that come right off, and the slide rail pulls right off. And that's all you need to do, the only part from the seat that you're going to need to retrofit it into the Hyundai Tiberon seat. So let's go from there. Okay, that easy. The 2 bolts and the whole slide rail releases from the bottom of the e-body seat. And you're done. You're done with your e-body seat. Go put it somewhere in storage, throw it under a cover. In my case, I'm going to redo it like I did the passenger side, and I'm going to resell those. But then once you have your slide rail off of the e-body seat, there's the 2 attachment bolts that go right into the seat. But right here you're going to see 4 rivets. Those 4 rivets you're going to have to cut out from this bracket. You're going to need this bracket to put to modify on the Tiberon seats. It's the only piece you need from the seats. So unfortunately, when you resell your old seats, you're not going to be able to sell it with full rails. One of the first things that you're going to have to do is drill out these brackets that come on the original Hyundai Tiberon seat. And they're simply held on by 2 rivets per bracket, and you drill those out. There's one here, and on each side. And once that is done, you have access to the attachment holes, which you can modify a bracket to put on the original e-body seats, and then it'll plug right back into the car. So we're going to go into a couple other things, and we'll be right back. Okay, here we have the 3D printed mock-ups installed on the slide rail, so you get an idea of what's going on. And this is the driver's side, the right hand side of the slide rail where this attaches to. This is the piece we took off the original Cuda. Now, a couple of notes. Again, very important, you have to have something to mock up these brackets. I will have the exact dimensions of what I have done in the description, and that should help you a lot. If you want, I'll probably even sell the 3D printed ones. But it doesn't really matter that much as long as you have some kind of thin metal to mock up these brackets before you cut into the final thick steel. And a quick note, obviously these are grade 8 nuts and bolts and washers. Make sure you have a dozen of those. Actually you need 10 per seat. So, 20, get a box 24, whatever you got to do. Get 24, some extra ones. Here we have the completed mock-up with the 3D printed mounting brackets. Obviously only plastic, so did this a few times to get the exact area of where the bolts are going to be attached to the mount brackets when I get them cut out of steel. So this makes it much easier. I've taken this and I've actually bolted it into the car to make sure it is the exact fit. So our next step is to take these off, trace them onto a band of steel, and we'll start cutting those out. Alright. Just another quick observation on the mock-ups for the mounting brackets. Definitely mark, obviously, which side, left front, left rear, and they go that direction, because if you flip them upside down, the bolts won't fit perfectly. Obviously, everyone doesn't have access to a 3D printer. Recommendation is just get some really thin steel that you can cut a few times to get the measurements exact on that. So just a quick tip, because it takes a few tries to get these bolt holes to match up perfectly. Ran into my first problem with the sides being different. On the driver's side, you're going to have this protrusion, whatever this was, has to do with the SRS airbags probably within the seat. We have none of that hooked up, so we're just going to take this off, and this looks like a metal plate, and we're just going to bend that down out of the way so this slide bracket can go back and forth. So this is going to have to be modified right here, that little piece. Okay, on the driver's side, that piece was in the way. We just simply took it off, unplugged it. We're not using it. It has something to do with electronics within the seat. We're not using any electronics. And we hammered that back so it doesn't interfere with the bracket on the main slide rail that's going to make it fit the E-body mount holes within the floor. So this is only on the driver's side, so don't worry about that for the passenger side. Also, some spacing underneath the brackets is going to be required in order for the mount bolt that comes under here, in order to be able to clear it easily from this bracket here. So you got to have a couple of washers in between the bracket and the actual mounting bracket to give it a little space. Okay, now we have the door side of the seat, the brackets installed, and the differences being is this side sits flush on the floor of the E-body. So you want your bolts to be flipped. See, this side we have them straight coming up because we have this bracket that's going to go on, and this is the part that sits flush to the floor. So these we don't have to worry about. They can all be straight up. On the door side of the slide rail is the opposite. You have to have them down. Now in the rear, and these are grade 8 3/4 inch bolts, so that's about the perfect size. These you can just put down and you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to interfere with anything in the slide rail, because that's as far as it goes. However, on this side it's the opposite. This has to go inside the rail, so you got to put them up, and then you're going to have to come in here and you're going to have to slice off that bolt so it's flush with the nut. And does that make sense? And that way that's what's going to sit flush against the floor of the Cuda once you get them installed. And here's the mounting bolt. And what we'll do, and we'll get into the metal part, is we make a spacer. So when these are, actually this one's already flush, so that'll make the whole mounting bracket flush with the floor of the Cuda. So what you're going to have to do here on the front is just slice off those bolts so they're even with the nut, and that'll give you a nice level mounting base once everything's tightened down. Okay, so talking about the measurements of all the bolt holes, because that is the tricky part. Now, pretty simple when you're mocking up using cardboard. That might be the easiest in the beginning. Get your two initial holes right here and have that mounted in, and then simply measure once the mocked up brackets are in. Measure, what is it, 31 inches anywhere within here, you know, obviously the middle, 31 inches, and then make a point, and that's where you're going to drill your hole. And same with this size. Use a piece of cardboard, piece of plastic, thin metal, whatever. Get your two initial mount holes that mount into the slide bracket. Remember we talked about where you drilled out the rivets? They'll just mount right there. And again, measure 31 inches, and that's your hole. So that takes care of the front to back. Now side to side, same thing. Once you get your front to back hole, then on the side to side you want 37.5. So just measure across once you have your mocked up brackets, mark your hole, and drill. Now this took me quite a few times because you know, they're a little bit different sizes. This the door side of the driver's side seat needs to be a little bit longer, and then this is the console side of the driver's side seat is a little bit shorter. On both of the seats, the console side is a little bit smaller bracket, and that kind of brings the seat away from the console. It's kind of counterintuitive, but again, I will give the exact measurements of these brackets in the description. But to get your holes, you just got to mount up your mocked up brackets and just measure 31 centimeters by 37.5. I've probably said that 10 times already, but it can't be stated enough. That's what's going to matter when you plop these seats in. You want them to go directly into the original mount holes within the floorboard of the Cuda. Alright, let's continue. And also, you're going to have to purchase mounting bolts for this side of the slide rail. Because remember, we didn't take that one off of the original Cuda seats. There's no reason to. So just simply 1.25 inches, maybe a little bit more of a thickness. Thick as you want, doesn't really matter. Here's the steel flat bar that we're using from Home Depot. Just a base flat bar. This one is 3/16 by 3 inches. I'm probably going to double those up and per bracket, and so that's a lot of cutting, and then we'll drill the holes in there, and using these as the template, it should go very quickly, very easy, hopefully. Definitely need a pretty heavy-duty bandsaw for these. We picked up one from Harbor Freight. I'll show you what that is right now. This is the portable bandsaw that we're going to use to cut the 3/16 inch flat bar. It's the Bauer from Harbor Freight, 1678EB, heavy duty, and I've seen some other YouTube videos on it, and it slices through railroad ties easily, so I don't think we'll have too much of a problem cutting this flat bar. Here's the case that the saw comes in, and it's a pretty beefy, heavy-duty saw for a hand tool. So it does not come with a blade, so I purchased the blade separately. Got the one, you know, right there at Harbor Freight as well for about 15 bucks. You get 2 blades, and I got the one that's for the heaviest stock metal that they have. So let's take this thing out and put it on this flat bar and see how we do. Okay, at this point we have the brackets cut out. That Harbor Freight saw cut through the 3/16 inch steel like butter, so that was no problem. And actually I was able to drill through to the mount holes also with just a hand drill, so I didn't have to do a drill press, which I don't have either. I'm short on space. And then once you're got your mock-up brackets going and you're confident in the measurements, then simply cut out your steel plate, put the mock-up bracket over it, and circle where the circles are, which side it goes and all that good stuff, and drill out your holes. And pretty simple, but this is where you want to spend your time on. You want to make sure that mock-up bracket is perfect, so you don't want to have to be drilling into the 3/16 inch steel every time. Get something thinner, and let's go from there. Just take I'm just going to use a hand drill, center punch, some oil, and it drills right through this 3/16 inch steel, no problem. I do have to sharpen the drill bits every now and then, but that's, you're going to have to do that with any kind of hard material. But this is the final bracket. They're bolted on permanently. In this case, I actually threaded the hole, because when you go to insert the seats, it's much better if this thing can just push through the floorboard of the Cuda. That way you don't have to align it underneath the seat, because it's kind of difficult to get at. Okay, we are back on the seats. So I made a couple changes that I'd like to go over, and had them in and out of the Cuda a couple of times. But as you get used to cutting the brackets, you can always make quick changes to make them fit just a little bit better. So when you do get your flat bar, make sure you cut a bunch of extra brackets for the sizes. Use the whole flat bar, because you'll end up possibly doing the changes like me. Although I will have the final measurements in the description of this video. The changes that I made is I moved this up, and what that is going to do is give me about 2 more clicks for the seat to go back. I'm about 6 feet, and so it gives me a little bit more leg room. So I just initially I had the hole probably almost center, but I moved it up maybe 5 millimeters. Doesn't sound like much, but it does make a difference behind the steering wheel. So that was my major change. And of course you got the, make sure you do the spacers in here so it can sit flush. And on this side, same thing. Initially the hole was right about in the middle, just moved them up. As long as your measurements are, as we talked about in the earlier part of the video, correct, I mean, you can move this up as far as you want. You could almost put it, you know, the seats into the back seat almost, but this is a good measurement. It's actually perpendicular with this hole, perfectly even, so it worked out really well. And then when we're going to just slap that on there, we'll bolt that down, and this is the original part that comes off of the original Barracuda. However, I did notice a little bit of a lean to one side, so what I'm going to do, from one of my previous applications, I have spacers that I used on this side. I'm going to throw them here, and that is going to just give me a little bit more height on the one side. It seems to need it, just to make it look a little more level. When you're looking through the back window of the car, the seats looked a little bit tilted, and these spacers here will correct that. So you're going to need little spacers on each side. So make note of that when you're cutting your flat bar. And that's basically the only changes that I've made. And we're going to go ahead and bolt this down, and hopefully we can close out the video inside the Cuda and show you how they look mounted there. Oh, one quick, very important thing. This right here is your best friend. Don't even attempt this job without a telescoping magnet, because as you're dealing with this, all these nuts and bolts, they are going to drop down. They are going to drop down within the seats. Fortunately, they don't get too lost in there, You're going to need this to get down there and pick up those bolts. I mean, seriously, dozens of times I've used that. So, and of course a magnetic tray, and I don't know if you've seen the magnetic little finger helps too to get these bolts up in there, but mandatory right here, not so mandatory but helpful. So those are a few last minute tips, and let's get this thing mounted in the Cuda and we'll go from there. Okay, we are fully installed with the Hyundai Tiberon seats for the Cuda. As you can see, they look pretty good. The passenger side is pretty much flawless, straight out of the junkyard. This one is in really good shape as well. You can see a couple of leather flaws there. We're going to get some leather dye and probably take care of that. But as far as the fit is concerned, you got plenty of room here from your lap, from the steering wheel, and with that little adjustment as far as pulling the seats back, they really go pretty far back. Obviously, you can't have them that far back when you have a passenger in there, but I can't really remember. I can't even remember the last time I had a passenger seat, like I said before. And this side, same way, is they fit really well, and you can see the space in between the console. This one is pretty perfect. I would have liked to have a little more separation here, but I want to exactly center with the steering wheel, so that is what it is. And the aftermarket seat belts, the 3-point seat belts, work perfectly with it, and they go all the way up. Easily get in and out of the back if you need to. And this is like a little lumbar support right here, and this is a little more of a bottom seat adjustment there, and this is the lever adjustment that lets it go front and back. So that's it. It's a fantastic upgrade. You can get them out of the junkyard for, I think they're around, I don't know, 50 bucks a piece at the most. I had to pay a little bit more, like 60 bucks a piece, because it had the SRS airbag, which I'm obviously not using, just cut all the wires and everything. But they're pretty heavy. They're quite a bit heavier than the original Cuda seats, but man, what a difference in comfort. They sit a little bit higher so you can see over the hood a little bit easier. The other ones were, the original seats were just too low for me. And yeah, they're well over probably $1,000 for if you want to go the Recaros or anything else really. And for 120 bucks and a little bit of modification with all the brackets, hopefully I'll be able to help you out with that with this video. And yeah, fantastic upgrade. Go ahead and do it, and go ahead and leave messages if you have any questions. I'll be monitoring this pretty closely, and I really appreciate your time. And check out JunkYardTV.com for all our videos, and of course you know, the JunkYardFind.com website. We appreciate your visits there as well. So that's it. Take it easy. Bye.